Welcome to Surviving Roots, the podcast where we journey through the complexities of our emotions together. I'm your host, Carrie Fund, and I'm here to guide you on a path of self-discovery, understanding, and healing. In each episode, we'll explore a range of emotions and experiences, from navigating grief and trauma to managing stress and anxiety. Through candid conversations, expert insights, and practical strategies, we'll uncover the tools you need to navigate life's emotional landscape with resilience and grace. So, let's embark on this transformative journey together. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself this time. This podcast is for you. Hi, everyone. I am beyond excited for my guest today. We are talking about the healing power of humor. And I have the one and only Alice Chan. She is a multifaceted talent known as a speaker, writer, producer, and a stand-up comedian with a global presence. Her comedy has graced venues such as The Stand and the New York Comedy Club in New York. On top of all of this, she is the creative mind, actually, I'm going to say creative genius behind MomCom NYC, a parenting platform that even Vogue recognized as the top 6 funniest Instagram accounts. Alice, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you today and to share your humor and wisdom with my guests.
Thank you for having me. And what a long, beautiful intro. I'm like, who is she talking about?
You, my dear, you.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to explore the many ways that we can find humor in everyday chaos that just life brings and parenthood. I have to tell everyone how I came to know you. I attended one of Alice's panels at a conference 2 years ago. It was about making moms laugh and the power of comedy and content marketing. I actually attended it last year and this year because it was so good. It really showed me how humor played a significant role in my own healing journey, but especially when I incorporated it into my social media. So you really reminded me, especially this year during the panel, that we can juggle both joy and sadness and to embrace the whole yin and yang of life. So thank you for making my childhood upbringing that was completely toxic funny. Thank you.
Carrie, I have to say, a lot of us have childhood trauma. And if you do, you actually have so much more content that you can make hilarious and more personal. So sometimes I'm so glad that I actually had a traumatic childhood, because then I'd be so straight-laced and I don't think I would be as funny. So I have to say it's almost like a blessing in disguise.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Wow. I mean, now I can actually thank my parents for something. So
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, I remember them arguing all the time. And I remember reading somewhere, it says that if you had turmoil or conflict in your house, you either ran from it or you were trying to solve it, and that just made you more creative. And I think I was the person who was trying to always solve it. Like, why is my mom and dad not getting along? Why are they arguing all the time? Why aren't they sleeping in the same room? And I tried to resolve it. And I thought I came up with a good solution. And when I was 7, I was really proud of myself. My dad was sitting by himself, and I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to talk to my dad about what should happen. I'm like, Dad, mom and you always argue, and I think I have the perfect solution. You guys should get a divorce. I was so proud of myself, and his face turned red. And especially from Asian culture, first generation immigrant parents from China do not believe in divorce. They will each other and try to kill each other, but they won't. So my dad almost like wanted to smack me in the face, and he's like, how dare you? He was so angry at me, and I'm like, what did I do wrong? I thought that was a very clever solution. And then I went back to the drawing board. I'm like, okay, what else can I do or help this situation out? And I think it does really fuel the creativity when you're a young kid trying to
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah, that's a very mature suggestion, but they say that a lot about kids that grow up sort of with toxic upbringings is that you sort of become the parent, you're parentified. So you sort of do get a little bit of a loss of like just being a free, child, and you really do start to take on adult mature roles. So that's a pretty mature suggestion.
Right? Like you're almost forced to grow up because you're like, okay, these two kids are fighting all the time. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I look at my 7-year-old today and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was his age when I
Yeah.
divorced, and I can never imagine my 7-year-old going through that. Right now,
Yeah.
he's like, his most stressful situation over the weekend is like, there are too many birthday parties. Like, Mom, I'm so stressed out. Last weekend, he's like, I'm so stressed out. I'm like, why? He goes like, I have to go to this birthday party, but I want to stay home. I'm like, wow, what a problem to have. You know?
Yeah, it's so true. And you know what? You brought up a good point, considering like we're both parents and we have children like that are the same age that when we were experiencing difficult things, it really hits home with me and makes me like pause when I think about the things I was dealing with at 7, 8, 9 years old and beyond. Like, I mean, my daughter's like, I don't want to be a Swifty fan. Do I need to be a Swifty fan? And she's trying to navigate that. And I'm like, good for you, kid. You know what? I yelled today, but it's okay because you're not scarred by Taylor Swift.
Yes, yes.
I'm doing something right.
Oh my gosh. Yes, you are.
Oh my
Right.
gosh. Well, I want to know, like, how did you begin this career path? Like, how did you find your passion for comedy? Because there are a lot of people that think they're funny and they're not funny. Like, how did you know that you were funny and you had this skill?
I didn't know. And I was always a painfully shy, awkward kid and dirty. Like dirty as in physically, I didn't take baths. I
Okay.
smelled, and my sister would always make fun of me. She would, you smell like pee. And I was just so awkward, and I was teased because I had crooked hair, dirty clothes. My my mom and dad worked so much that I think she didn't even have time to bathe me,
Yeah.
or even tell me to brush my teeth. And so I remember very I had a lot of trouble finding friends and making friends, and it took a while before I could make friends. It's usually not, you know, based off my looks. It was based off my personality and my kindness to people. And then
Right.
I remember I made some friends finally in fourth grade, but I was really quiet. I was really shy. And my teacher, this was the pivotal moment where my teacher sat me down and she said, okay, in fifth grade, I'm going to separate you from all your friends. You're going to be alone with new people coming into this class. And I was terrified because I'm like, what am I going to do without my crutches, my two best friends?
Yeah.
And I was always hiding behind them. And she goes, you're going to be on your own. And she told me, she goes, Alice, you are a mute. And I didn't know what that meant at 10 years old. I was like,
Right.
mute. And I looked it up. I was like, oh my gosh, this is someone who never speaks.
Yeah.
She told me, she goes, you're going to have to find friends. You're going to have to try to make new friends. And I ordered a book, and there's this book that is no longer around for very obvious reasons. It was called The A to Z Guide on How to Make Friends. And it was
Okay.
available on Scholastic. So I ordered it. It came in a couple of weeks, and I ran home and I flipped to page A, and it said, A is for acne. Do you have acne? Because no kids want to be with anyone with red bumps on their face. That's ugly. Get rid of acne. So I'm like, okay, thank goodness I don't have acne.
My
And
God.
I flipped through page B, C, D. I don't know what they were, but I remember I stopped on page F and I stopped reading. And it said, funny. Are you funny? You have to be funny. If you're not funny, learn some new jokes because people love funny people. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I had it in my head. I have to be funny. So I called up my aunt. I'm like, I have to be funny. How can I be funny? And she goes, you got to read joke books. So at that
Oh my
time, I
God.
think she was a teenager. She gave me this joke book, and it was 101 dirty jokes. And I didn't know. Okay, I just rehearse this. And she goes, yeah, rehearse it. and then just tell the jokes. So I did that, and every night I was rehearsing 5 to 6 jokes, and then the next day I would say, "Who wants to hear dirty jokes?" And mostly it was the boys that wanted to
Yes.
hear them. So I started doing this in class while everybody was out for recess. And then I got in trouble because I wasn't supposed to use the classroom as a comedy venue. And then, but I was hooked. I felt the
Oh,
empowerment,
wow. Yes.
and I felt empowered because I was like, wow, I have this power and this ability to make people laugh. And I felt good because they're not laughing at me. I'm controlling this. And so I started doing impressions, like impersonations. And at that time was watching Sweatin' to the Oldies with by Richard Simmons. And I loved him. And I was like, I loved his energy and I wanted to channel that energy. And I started doing Richard Simmons impersonations and I started doing accents, anything to get a laugh.
Mhm.
And I think that's what um, I just got hooked by, oh, like, wow, it feels really good to make people laugh. And I felt validated because I never felt validated at home. And as
Right.
a little child, that's all you're looking for, validation all the time. And I'm still
Yeah.
looking for that today.
Yeah.
And I think people have told me, oh, you're funny, you're funny. And I kind of just really worked on my personality because I had no choice. It was more like a survival mechanism where I
Right.
could not rely on my looks.
Yeah.
And, I was in a school that was predominantly white people. And so there were racist remarks. There were people teasing about my clothes and my haircut. So I had to really work on my personality because that was the only thing that could get me through this. And I
Yeah.
think when you're an ugly kid, the ugly duckling, your personality shines. And if you're good looking as a kid, everything comes too easy.
Yeah.
Personality.
Yeah.
I almost have to thank my teacher, my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Carlton, if she's out there, who called me a mute.
I mean, I was just going to say, did you get an A that year in class because you went home? First of all, let's just go back up. You were so mature once to suggest to your parents to get a divorce. Two, your teacher calls you a mute. You decided to do research. How old were you? 7?
I was
8?
9.5. I
Oh,
was like,
9.5. You go home, you do research, you buy a book, and then you take control of your life by becoming the school comedian. Like, I don't
right.
know. I mean, I feel like this is a great example, even as a child, where you can take your pain points and literally turn them into power, even when you don't even realize you're doing it at 9 years old.
Yeah, exactly, Carrie. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew there was a problem. I had to solve it. I had to get to it.
Yeah.
And when I was in fourth grade, I had the worst report card at I failed like 4 classes, 4 subjects, math, English, 2 other social studies and something else. And then my new class, fifth grade, I had straight A's and I won the music award, academic award, and the science award. Total flip. So when my
Yeah.
yeah, and it paints a really good perspective on like it's it really probably was that I wasn't happy. Maybe something was happening at home that I
Yeah.
was a hermit and I wasn't engaging in class. And then maybe that book did help me. Maybe making people laugh and feeling empowered did help my self-confidence. And I was
Yeah.
engaged in my academics in fifth grade.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, I completely relate to you when you talk about validation. I was not funny at all, so I did not go the comedic route, but I threw myself into sports because the things I wasn't getting at home, the attention, just my parents' time and the validation from them was getting them from trophies and coaches. And so I threw myself into sports. So I can totally relate to the validation aspect. But I do want to ask you, because you just mentioned still today, are you searching for validation?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. Not as much as before. I'm a lot more confident. I don't really care, and I think this comes with age. I don't really care about other people's opinion of me. I don't care if I look disheveled out in the public. I
Yeah.
used to care about, my face and how I'm dressed, but not as important anymore because I'm so confident in my personality. I know I can win a conversation. I could win someone over. I mean, but I still, yeah, and that's why I still do stand up because I love that validation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's honestly, I think it's healing isn't linear and it really is a lifelong marathon, and you do get to choose how, your pace and what you carry on that journey. But I do think that even though when we heal and we validate ourselves, those little parent wounds are just always scars that are reminders, because I deal with that too. Like, confidence issues and validation from others. And that's why I work so hard to teach my kids like internal validation. Like everything is internal, everything is an inside job, because it does feel like a big waste of time when you're still learning these life freaking lessons in your 40s. I don't want them to have to go do meditation retreats and go read self-help books. I don't want them to do any of this stuff.
Yeah. And I'm like, I definitely don't want my kids to be stand-up comedians.
Really?
I'm like,
What would you say?
no, I'm like, that is not a career choice for you
Oh.
guys. Like, you guys are a lot more smarter and talented, and hopefully not as brittle as I was and damaged. So I'm hoping they have a more healthy outlook in life. And I don't believe that they have a lot of conflict at home that would make them want to tell their stories, their tragic stories on stage. Whereas I use a lot of my, the pain points as my,
Yeah.
and that's how I release it. So yes, I do it for validation, but I also do it for other reasons. It's therapeutic for me. And also I do find the connection with the audience very healing for me, and it gives me so much life, especially when I have people that come from an Instagram following and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I saw your show and I want to come meet you." And to me, that's like, oh, it's like a big warm fuzzy hug. Like, you're here, like you took the time out and you came here. And that was probably something I was yearning for when I was little. And that's why I
Yeah.
that because I never got my parents never came to my shows or my performances, and or even like my graduation. My mom was like, "Do we have to come?" When I graduated university, and I was like, "Wow!" Like, and here are these people, strangers, buying tickets, paying money, and
Yeah.
their Friday night to see me. At that, to me, I'm like so appreciative.
Well, I think our parents went to the same university of parenting
I was
because I mean, maybe we are. Because I gotta tell you, I would be like first in every sport, and I would be the only one without their parents sitting there watching me hurdle or watching me cheer or watching me this. And even my parents that hate each other and have been divorced since I was 6, they both didn't want to see each other. So neither of them showed up at my graduation. I was like, yeah, no, but I was just like, wow, like, hello, this is about me. So it's so interesting because when I got married like 10 years ago, I was already estranged. My mom was already on her way out with estrangement, but I would have had to have picked anyway, because there's no way I could have trusted those two in their room. I wouldn't have been able to walk down the aisle without some kind of circus routine or them both no showing, and then it would have been, I don't know. I think it's funny. I think they must have went to the same university of parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that school is in business anymore.
I don't think so either. Speaking of parenting, I want to know what inspired you to create MomCom NYC. Like, how does humor, what made you create it? Like, what inspired you to create it? And how does humor help you with the ups and downs of motherhood?
Yeah, I love that question. I started stand up before I was a mom. So a lot of my material were about me living with my cat, living in New York City as a single person dating. And then I had a lot of really bad ex-boyfriend jokes and stories. And then I took when I got became pregnant, I think after 6 months, my husband's like, I don't want you to be going to these open mics. I was doing open mics where I'm like, after work, I would go to a dive bar. Sometimes there's only like 5 dudes in their
Oh
20s, not laughing at pregnant jokes. It
my
was very awkward, and it became like kind of just sketchy. And my husband's just like, please don't do this anymore. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I stopped for 3 years, and I just focused on, I quit my full-time job um at a bank, and I focused on trying to be the perfect mom, always spending time with my kid and going to yoga and
Yeah.
baby classes and sing-along classes. And then I think it was my second kid. When I had my second kid, I still felt like I was searching for something and I was never really happy. I started doing graphic design again. I started freelancing. I started taking up photography, but
Mhm.
none of it fulfilled me. And so I remember I was living in Brooklyn. Across the street, there was a bar and there was a comedy show happening. It was a free show. It was all women lineup. So there was no excuse for me not to go. So I walked in and I remember after the show, I felt like this new sense of energy in me. And I felt like this is what I have to do. I have to get back into comedy.
Yeah.
A month later, the host put me on the show. I totally bombed because it was all like material that I did not relate anymore. I was talking about ex-boyfriends,
Hmm.
living with cats. Like, okay, this is not me. And then I'm like, my demographic has switched. Maybe I talk about me as a parent and my struggles as a mother. And then so I found Instagram. I'm like, oh, what's this app? I started, it'd be great for writing jokes. This would help me write every day. So I would try to write a short joke because you only have a little like 1080 by.
Yeah.
So that helped me refine my jokes and I would put it out there. And I remember after I had like maybe 250 followers or so, and uh an Instagram mom came as snarky breeders. She said, "Hey, would you want to come into a share group?" And I thought this was a scam. I was like, "What is this?" And she's like, we're just all parents and we're just sharing each other's jokes. And so I did, and it grew to 2 to 5,000 with the help of the community. And I realized, oh my gosh, there's a community. So I
Yeah.
started to do that more regularly. And then it was only to 2020 when the pandemic hit, I started to switch to videos, whereas many people did, because
Yeah.
what
Wow.
that was just me trying to find my new demographic. And I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to be moms. And it's kind of like mom comedy.
Yeah. And now it's what, over 200 and something thousand followers. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's
have an amazing
long
community.
queue. It took a long time to get there, but I feel like a, everyone on it is mostly positive and loyal and good people. I hardly get any trolls anymore like I used to, but I think they've kind of like left and unfollowed me, just which is great. But and some of my followers, they say the funniest things, and I'm just like, this is so amazing. This community, just the back and forth, the complimenting, the
Yeah.
job, this is so fun. And like just really, really great community. I never thought Instagram would be my home. My
Yeah. I think that's amazing. And I think it's amazing that, to have a community like that, because when you grow up not having just like support and validation, or like, being cheered for, or helping someone navigate, finding your way, like it's amazing. You're like, wait, this person just met me, or this person believes in me, or this person, like, it's a scam, or what do they want? Like it's just, and it really is being able to create a sense of community. And sometimes it's even creating a family from friends, so it's a really beautiful thing. I love that. I do want to ask you a personal mom question, because as a comedian, like, do you feel a lot of pressure? Like, does everything with being a mom tickle your funny bone, or like, do you ever just get triggered? and
oh
like, do you feel the pressure to like, oh, I have to be funny, or like, I'm gonna lose my shit?
yeah, no, I think the mundane of everything, like the constant laundry, dishes, it's always going to be there. So you might as well make light of it
Yeah.
and think of it as something funny, like it's relatable. People don't want to do dishes and laundry all the time. So what are you going to do? Just take that and then throw it in a different direction and make light of it. But then there are things that do trigger me, like the expectations of moms or the devaluing of a mother. Like once you become a mom, you're not hot or sexy anymore, or you're not good at your job, or you can't stay and work overtime, or childcare. Why is there no childcare for moms who want to work
Yeah.
outside of the house? And or just like the whole people are like, oh, you're a stay-at-home mom, so that means you have a lot of free time. What do you do? Or the undervaluing of what a stay-at-home parent does that keeps a household running. I'm like, if I'm not home for 2 days, no one has clean underwear. That's, but no one thinks about that until they run out of underwear, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen, just for me to go to Nashville a couple weeks ago to that conference, my husband kept the kids alive, but they didn't eat one green vegetable. Swimming at night was considered their bathing. Um, and the amount of sugar that I found in the house was just like, oh, and they didn't brush their teeth at night for 3 days because they literally told me they fell asleep in front of the TV watching movies every night. And I'm just like, I bet that parenting felt really hard because when you don't have to actually stay on task or like be the responsible one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure, Carrie, go to the conferences. I've got this. And I'm like, what you do? None of the
Hey,
homework was done. Like,
2 to 3 days, anyone can keep the kids alive, right? Feed them
yes,
with sugar, keep them happy, yes to screen time. Yeah,
yeah,
that's easy.
yep,
And then you hands off, and then you toss them to the next person, right?
yeah.
And then you have to pick up the pieces and be like, why do you have a cavity now? And what's that?
I know.
Yeah.
It's really crazy because not to toot our horns, but like we're literally creating and raising human beings that are going to be like the next generation. So it's like there's a lot of responsibility, like emotional intelligence, physical well-being,
Yeah, so
our
much.
like our legacy.
And I have two boys, and I'm like, you will grow up to be gentlemen and good humans who
Yeah.
care about the environment. So I'm like teaching them all this stuff, which does take energy and patience, right? Like, where I'm like, okay, to my husband, can you get James to do the laundry? And he's like, I'll just do it because it's going to take more time to teach him. I'm like, but I want him to learn.
Yeah.
I'll teach them, like they need to learn this stuff, and they need to learn that you're part of the household, you're
Yeah.
part of the chores.
Yeah, it is. It's true. It is exhausting. I had to take my daughter to the doctor the other day and I was like, here, you're going to fill out the forms. And she's like, you just do it. I was like, one day I'm not going to be here. You need to fill out, like, do you know the address? What's my phone number? Like, say here. And it took like 25 minutes. I know the nurses were getting so annoyed with me and I was like almost wanting to give in, but I was like, if I don't stand my ground, then she'll know I'll give in at any time. So it's like, you got
Good
to
for
learn how to
you.
take care of yourself. You're almost 10 years old.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. Ooh.
I want to switch paths here for a second because I know that you are navigating loss personally with the passing of your father. I'm so sorry. And I know that you shared some moments with your community on social media that were both heartbreaking and heartwarming. And I'm just curious how you use humor while grieving.
Such a great question, but very important one too. And I've never experienced such a significant, profound loss. I've lost my grandma, which was very hard, but to lose a parent, um, to me, that was just something unraveling. And I feel like I'm in a different dimension now, where
Mhm.
I feel a lot now. And I can also understand my partner's loss. He lost his dad 25 years ago.
Oh, wow.
The grieving will always be there, the pain will always be there. But I never could quite understood it. I always knew, oh, that's unfortunate he lost his dad at such a young age. But now I'm just like, hey, how are you feeling? Like he lost his dad. Like I feel much more. And for me, I had to use humor to cope. It was so painful for me, especially like planning the funeral from afar and not being there. A lot of guilt was I wasn't there for a lot of his times. I could have been there before he fell, or I could have taken him out for dinners. So for me, it was very painful in that regard because there was some guilt to not being there for him. So I used humor to create a distance from the situation that was so overwhelming and from me. And I would remember the funny things that he did and
Yeah.
would look at that and remember that and be like, oh my gosh, I remember dad used to do this. And it kind of erases some of the bad things that he used to do as a father, or that he wasn't there, he wasn't present, he was
Yeah.
mom a lot. It kind of puts that on the side. And I remember the funny things that he did. And I also remembered, I dug even deeper. I was like, I remember when I was 4 and he came home with a stuffy, and I
Mhm.
was so happy. I remember when he came to my parent teacher conference, but he didn't have to, but he did come. And I remember he surprised my whole class and got them candy, you know? So I realized it actually brought me closer to my dad, um,
Mhm.
remembering all those fun, light moments. And it kind of erased the parts that weren't so good about my
Yeah.
dad. And I mean, he was not the conventional good father. Um, but in so many ways, I'm like, you know what though? He was um, he was working hard to make sure that we were all taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
to me what's good enough. And I started taking his stories that were so stressful. Like last one time I went to the casino with him. He gambled a lot and he loved to go to the casino. I'm like, he's 88 years old. I can't change the man. I'm gonna go sing and bond with him instead of taking him to a comedy show with me. He never
yeah.
did comedy. So I would go to the casino with him. And I remember I told him to stay at the lobby so I could park the car and come grab him. And then when I parked the car, came back, he was gone. And I got so stressed out, Carrie. I was crying. I was talking to the security guards. I was running like a mad woman down and up the stairs. And I thought something bad had happened to him. We finally found him. He was fine. But when I came home, I remember my brother-in-law was like, "Oh, well, there's a story for your comedy." I'm like, "Oh, how can I change this into something?" So now I have this really funny bit about how I lost my dad at the casino. People love the story, and it makes me feel closer to him, and to realize. And I thought, you know what? That was kind of cute. I remember his face, and when I found him, he kind of felt bad that he didn't wait for me. So the humor is a coping mechanism for me, so I'm not dwelling on the negative parts of him being a father, those negative,
Yeah.
and it's made me closer to him after he's gone,
Yeah.
and it's made me uh keeps his memory alive if I put him on stage with me,
Yeah.
with comedy, like funny stories about him.
That's really beautiful, Alice. I think it says also a lot about you that how you've handled and processed like anything that was painful in your childhood, the fact that you didn't hold on to it and allow it to just push you down, that you were able to embrace all of these beautiful things and memories with your father from your childhood. Because a lot of times people, hold on to the pain. They don't let it be their teacher. They just hold on to it, which I think turns into anger and resentment. So it's such a beautiful thing to hear that your journey with being with your father towards the end, that you were able to just embrace all of the beautiful memories and the things that when he did show up and the things that he did do and really be like present
Right.
during all of that. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not easy to do with just any parent. Like, it's always like some people are like, well, I can't find one good thing about my parent, so I
Yeah.
can't. Right? There has to be one thing.
Yeah.
Hold on to that light, and
Yeah.
from there it can manifest into other things.
Yeah.
But I could have downward spiraled and spiraled downwards, just remembering, oh, I remember him, yelling at my mom and calling her this name, and then he didn't come to this graduation, or I could have done that. But
Yeah.
no, it would have created more distance from me and him. I would have felt worse about myself, and the
Yeah.
grief process I wouldn't be able to do it. Like, just I wouldn't have been able to plan his funeral. And I
Yeah.
felt like it was such an honor for me to plan, even though it was like just logistics and stuff. But I'm like, this is what dad would have wanted.
Yeah.
And I want to do his slideshow. I think this is what dad would want. And then it just made me closer to him.
That's really beautiful. I, as you're talking about all this, like, I want to ask you when you're on stage and you're using stories that you've been inspired from your father and things like that. Like, how do you balance grief without, you know, being overcome with sadness? Because I know sometimes I'm much better at it now talking about my life because I've been talking and stuff about it a lot. But I know like sometimes I feel like I can still get triggered and become very emotional, like almost like my emotions are so like right under the surface of my skin. And the one little word or one little thing can sort of bring a memory. And I literally become ugly cry face, cue ugly cry face. And I'm still shocked till this day. But I'm just wondering, like, when you're on stage with an audience and you're using, material that's been inspired by the relationship with your father, like, how do you navigate, like, keeping grief in check and sadness, from not being a volcano eruption on stage in front of
Yeah,
an
and Mary, I
audience?
totally know what you mean. I think it takes, like you said, you keep talking about it. So
Yeah.
you're a little bit better at knowing like what's next to say. Where I remember he passed away, and then 5 days later I had a comedy show in New York. I had to leave my family after one day after he passed, fly back to New York, and had 4 days to prepare for that show. And I'm like, should I cancel it? No. So I went in and I didn't know what I was going to say, but I'm like, I have to address that my father passed away. People were following my stories. And also, like, people just knew. Even my comedian friends were like, I'm so sorry. So, like, even when they said that, I was like, oh, don't make me cry right now. I had to, I had to somehow trick my brain and be like, I know what the punchline is going to be. I'm going to focus on that because it's going to end up on a light note.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful that you don't want to bring down the room. You have a job as a comedian. Storytelling is different. You can make the whole room cry and you've won. But as a comedian, I don't want to make the room cry.
They're not paying to have a nervous breakdown. I never
Yeah.
thought about that. They're coming to laugh.
They want a good time. They want to leave having endorphin rushes, right? And not like mascara running down their cheeks. But so I had to craft it in a way like, okay, I gotta keep it light. I gotta make sure that people know that I'm okay. Because if they think I'm not okay, the whole room's gonna be disastrous. And it's not gonna be good for all the other comedians to be performing. So I had to make sure that they knew I was okay. So I can address the situation. My dad passed. It was last week. It was peaceful. I got to spend time with him. I'm so grateful for that. And they knew I'm okay
You're
because
okay.
and then I follow up with a story. But I do have to say this funny story about my dad. I don't even have to preface it. I'm like, but I did lose my dad at the casino. You know. And then I talk about I just focus on the punchline. I know that's gonna be funny. I have to deliver that. I have a job to do. I have to make sure the crowd knows that I'm okay. And if they
Yeah.
do, then they can just sit back and enjoy the jokes instead of being like, is she going to be okay? Does someone need to give her a tissue? Is she gonna
Yeah.
collapse? Like, so you don't want anyone to worry about you once you're on stage. And that's what I do. Like, I just want to preface it. I'm okay, peaceful. I love him. Let's go. Let's
Yeah.
let's address that pink elephant, white elephant, the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room.
And
I think
then
Pink Elephant was a club in New York City when I was there in my 20s.
oh,
But the elephant in the room, you just had a flashback of so many things. Oh my
yeah, I
God.
don't know where I got that one from. Yeah, so that's kind of like a trick that I do.
Okay. Wow. So, I mean, I never thought about that. People are really coming to laugh. And I guess you have a job of like juggling your own emotions and honestly their emotions.
Yeah.
So, how do you deal with negative feedback? Like hecklers, or if you have a bad crowd, or if something didn't like land well and you didn't get the response that you were planning on, like how do you deal with that? Because I feel like this kind of advice would help all of us just in life.
It really does. How do you recover from a mishap or an embarrassing, awkward situation? And sometimes I'll say a joke and I miss a word or I do it too fast and the timing's not right. And the joke lands very different. And I don't get a laugh. As soon as I hear silence, when I'm used to hearing laughter, I keep going.
Yeah.
Conversation. Like, so the cat didn't die. But then I went into the sweater shop. Like I would just, okay, I noticed, but nobody else noticed. I'm just going to continue like it was a story, a continuous story. And with hecklers, I actually love when people heckle because they don't know that they're disrupting the show and they think they're being the star, but you've already automatically turned the whole room against you because you're disrupting their time now. And so you put
Ooh.
yourself in a really bad spot, and now you're making my job easier. All you do really to get a laugh is like, can you be quiet? Or is that all you have? Are you a comedian? Can you shut up? Are you drunk? They're not even funny comebacks, but the
Yeah,
audience is already on your side because they want that kid or person to shut up, right? So
yeah.
I welcome hecklers. I'm like, try it. Like no one's paying to see you. So you're gonna or a bouncer will come and get you. Like it's one or the other.
I mean, seriously, from the beginning of us talking today, just you are a perfect example of a little girl taking control of her life, turning her little pain points into power, and you've created a career from it. Like most people just want to like not be like their parents and heal and try not to be, try to be better parents, but you've not only done that, but you've actually turned this into a career. So bravo, Alice. I mean,
They make me cry.
I'm just saying, I mean, bravo. And I think you're right. I think we can all look back, and even if things weren't what we'd hoped for, or think maybe what we thought we deserved as kids, I think we can always find one good thing. We can always find one good thing, and we can use that to create the life that we've always dreamed of, and perhaps the family that we've always wanted, and the career.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, but if you keep doing it, it's just working that muscle
Yeah.
and always find one glimmer of hope and then keep that as your anchor. And from that, just like build up, just find one thing.
Well, I would like to end on one question. What is the best piece of advice that you have received, whether it's with healing or humor? What's one thing that you'd like to share with everyone today?
I remember I've been watching a lot of like people dealing with grief. And I think what was comforting was like grief will come at random times. It could be, I could have a really happy week and then all of a sudden I'm driving alone and I start crying, but to let it and just to embrace it. And because grief is part of you now and it'll find its way. And I remember it was the conference, Carrie. Remember the singer,
Oh,
Ingrid? She
yes.
said she touched on grief and I loved it. She said, uh, you choose, oh, sadness chooses you.
Yeah.
You get to choose joy. And I really loved it. I was like, it's so simple, but so true and powerful. We wake up every day and you just have to choose joy.
Yeah. I wrote that down from the conference. That was a good one. Yeah. It was just like, wow, that was a
Yes.
very powerful statement with the light bulb, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the main things I got from the event.
Yeah, well, we always have a choice, and we have the choice every morning to choose joy. Just like you were the little girl who had the choice to go buy a book and learn what a mute was and decide that you weren't going to be mute, and now look at you.
Oh, Carrie, I wish I had this book. I
Ah,
wish I had it with me. It saved me,
ah.
but also was so wrong.
Oh my gosh. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and for being here. I loved having like this extra time with you because your panel the last 2 years, I take away so much, and it's only been 2 panels, but I take away so much. It's really helped me in my own healing. It's helped me in my platform and with my own community. And I just love that I got to get to know even more about you today and your beginning and your childhood, and perhaps our parents did go to the same university. So I just, I love it.
Well, you're an A student. And thank you
you.
for having me here. And when I read the questions that were coming through, and I thought to myself, this is going to be the best podcast interview that I've been on.
Thank you.
Because we're tying in so much about life and grief and humor. And I hope people like, I love that your platform is about how to, you're talking about pain, you're talking about not fun stuff, but you can add levity, and you're great at that. So I'm so proud of you for continuing to see that humor can be so powerful, especially when you're dealing with pain. Laughing is has so many physical benefits. You can't deny that it's not good for you, for your immune system, your endorphins, and your stress, right?
Yeah.
So daily, I hope people take away this is like, try to laugh every day. That's it.
It's healthier than wine.
It is. Do it with wine if you want.
Totally good, but it's, listen, the emotions and the pain and the feelings are going to be there. So you can either keep ignoring them and then deal with that aftermath, or you can just, roll with it. It's there either way.
And try to look at things with a different lens, not always, everything's not always a straight road. There's always like you can always turn a little bit and then look at a different lens, and you can find a glimmer of humor in that. And if it's like, when you trip and you think people are laughing at you, laugh at yourself. It takes away the shame and the embarrassment from it.
I love that, Alice. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for joining this week's episode of Surviving Roots. Let's continue this conversation as a community. For more updates about the show, remember to subscribe on iTunes to leave a review. Also, there will be some special bonus footage from the show on Instagram @carrie.fund. I'll see you there.